when you are willing and not afraid anymore to pay the price for freedom. Don't let this white man tell you that violence is wrong. Every damn thing that he got it by being violent, killing people, raping and robbing and murdering. He's doing it as we speak. And then he has the nerve to come and tell us that violence and hatred won't get it. Don't buy that. He's worthy to be hated. Worthy because of the evil that he does. God hates. I don't know why man think you're better than God when God in the Bible said he loved Jacob, but he hated Esau. In the Bible, he said no man can serve two masters. He'll love one and hate the other. They have made us little sheep that they can walk over and run over. But when we decide it's over, and we should make that decision, it's over. We're not taking it anymore, and we cannot pass on to another generation the legacy of our cowardice when we know the problem and won't move to erase the problem. That's our fault. We got to change. See, one of the things that our ancient people knew, yours and mine, when it got to the point where they would be extinguished, they had to fight. Even if they lost, they had to fight. So the great warrior spirit came up out of us. Same with the blacks, same in Haiti, same in Central and South America, the Maroons. All of those came to a position where they had to fight. In that church, when 9 of our brothers and sisters were shot down by a skunk, how in the hell are we justified in offering him love and he offers us death?
Somebody asked me the other day.
Excuse me for my passion.
That's
brother.
okay. They asked me, can you forgive him? And I looked at him, I said, no, I cannot forgive him because he knew what he was doing. He was cold and calculated, and he was just fostering the same hate.
Who asked you that question, brother? Did he look like us?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of them.
Yeah, I know.
How in the hell? I mean, it's an insult to me
an insult
that you're going to ask me, can you forgive? How long have white people been doing this kind of evil to the darker people in the earth? Since they've been here. And when we make up our mind, we're not taking it no more. Because it's better to be dead than to live under tyranny all the days of your life. This is why America separated from England. The tyranny of King George was too much for them to bear. So what did they do? They decided death is better. So it was Patrick Henry that said, give me liberty or give me death. And until we come up with that kind of mind, I'd rather be dead than to live continuously under this kind of tyranny. And when you think like that, you'll do what is necessary to move the tyrant off of you. With the help of God, we will win if we fight.
There we go. Sorry, guys. I forgot to hit the unmute button. But good morning, and thank you all so much for tuning in to the program today. Just a big shout out to everyone who's watching, from Tamika to Carol, Don, Sean, Marcia, Manzi. All of you guys are here for it. We're going to be jumping in, and we're going to dedicate this entire week to the conversation of race and racism and prejudice. So we do have sound. Just refresh your devices, and you should be able to hear me. So again, thank you guys very much for joining the conversation. I think this is an important conversation to be had. As you guys know, for the past week, I've been in this trial, which is now on hiatus until June the 17th. So we're back to our regular schedule. So we wanted to welcome, we do have some guests joining us from both New York and Los Angeles. So apologies for the mute audio. But we are very, very pleased to, I think, attack this conversation head on. As you guys know, here on the Hardcore Truth and just generally on Cayman Mall Road, we don't shy away from the tough topics. We have the discussions. Sometimes it makes us uncomfortable. Sometimes it pushes the realm of who we are. But we can't continue to live and exist in a bubble. We have to be willing to know that the only way that we can address issues is to address them head on. As you guys know, I personally have lived in America. I lived in Florida in Tampa for 15 years of my life. I pretty much grew up in Tampa for the age of 9 until I completed my first university degree. And, I experienced certain things whilst there. But listen, I'm still standing in front of you today. So I can't say that I've experienced the worst of it because I didn't have a police officer with his knee on my neck, and I wasn't begging for air, and I wasn't calling out to my deceased mother. Someone sent me a photo this morning, and I'm just trying to verify the contents of this before I actually share it. But I mean, if this is even true, this makes the loss of this life. Not that there's anything that could have justified the loss of this man's life, but now we're hearing that the initial police call, why he was called about some alleged fake $20 bill, it wasn't even a fake $20 bill. So I'm going to verify that here in a second. But if that is true, that makes this so much more egregious. And the man who made that phone call that eventually led to the death of this man, and by the way, 2 autopsies have now been done on Mr. George Floyd. Both of them concluded death by homicide. One of them, which was a state autopsy, basically said, oh, he had some Benadryl or something in his system, and he also had a heart condition. So technically, he died from the heart attack or whatever. But I'm thinking their ultimate conclusion is homicide. So depending on which news media you listen to, they will put a little bit of a spin on the headline. But he died by homicide, which means that he died by the hands of somebody else. And if it wasn't for that police officer putting his knee on this man's neck, the man would still be alive today. He wouldn't have went into cardiac arrest, regardless of what was in his system. The lack of oxygen in his body for 7+ minutes, basically asphyxiation, where you're slowly strangling someone of the air that is in their breath, I think is beyond disgusting. Here in the Cayman Islands, we have had the luxury of pretending that we don't live in a world that is dictated by race. We'll have that discussion tomorrow evening, or this evening, sorry. We have a mixed race Caymanian who will be on the program talking about how some of her experiences. And then Thursday and Friday, we're going to bring it back home. So today and tomorrow, we'll be speaking with our American counterparts to see what they have been enduring, what their struggles are, what their experiences are, what their thoughts are. And then by Thursday and Friday, and this evening as well, we're going to bring it back home. We're going to talk to Caymanians around the world. A young man in the UK is going to have a word with us. We've got Jasmine, who's going to be joining us this evening. She's currently in Miami, but she does live in the Cayman Islands, but she got stuck in Miami during the COVID shutdown. So, we need to have this discussion. We can no longer sit back as Caymanians and pretend like this is an issue that doesn't affect us, because we actually have it here. Despite what we might want to think about this, we are very much in the trenches. But we have the luxury of having a small island and a relatively comfortable, for some of us, social economic situation. And so that allows us to not see what is staring at us right in our faces. And we're going to rip the band aid off this week. The entire week is going to be dedicated to race relations. So let's go ahead now and join some of our friends. We've got Rassan. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, that's how you say my name. Yeah.
Okay,
Good morning.
I can't hear you. So sorry, just do a mic check again for me.
Mic check. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Let me.
now I'm hearing you. So
Okay.
awesome. And then we have Indiria who is joining us. Now, Rassan, you're from LA, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm over here in LA.
Okay, Los Angeles. All right. So Indiria, you're in LA as well. Thank you so much for joining in. And then we have Shanice from New York. Now I don't actually see Shanice, but I'm assuming. Oh, there you are.
Hey.
Beautiful
Morning.
morning, guys. How is everyone?
Hey, good.
Good. Yeah.
Okay, so listen, we're in the Cayman Islands. Thank you guys so much for agreeing to join me on the Cold Hard Truth this morning. This show is all about just honesty, open dialogue, and hopefully trying to get to the bottom of some of what's going on. So I want to hear your own individual stories. We've got like 2 hours basically almost. The clip that I played this morning was very passionate, and I think there will be people who will watch that and think, "Oh, this is too emotive." And I get a little bit bothered when I hear people say something like that because as I shared this morning, my personal experience hasn't been that of many Americans. I lived there for 15 years, but I think a lot of that honestly was very, very sheltered. And I shared a story last week where when I was at USF, I had done a course on Black history. And it literally just looked at the period, I think, from the 1940s to the 1960s, which is a relatively short period of time, right? But the things that I saw, now I was born in the 70s, but the things that I saw happening up until the 60s, and definitely beyond, to me are shocking in the sense that that wasn't that long ago. So there are people who are alive who experienced the lynching. There are people who are alive who experienced the separate but supposedly equal system in America. And I mean, the greatest impression that it had on me is I thought to myself, wow, the people are alive who still have this in their DNA. They still have this existence, this prejudice, this hate of them simply because of the color of their skin, which they have absolutely no control over. So this isn't history. This is like the here and now. Those persons are still alive. They've got children who are still alive. We know the impact of trauma on an individual, but we only want to look at it in the context of certain persons. So, for example, research has shown that trauma on a people, such as the Jewish people, changes their entire DNA. So, in other words, the stress of what they experienced, of that single event, is able to be passed on from like one generation to the next. And that causes all sorts of issues that we need to tie in a social context. And no one wants to have those conversations because then you have to admit that there's a real reason why there's a higher number of African Americans incarcerated than other races. You have to talk about why there are more African Americans dying of COVID-19 exponentially than anybody else because of the poverty, because of the unequal systems that exist even in healthcare in 2020. So, Rashawn, let's start with you. Let's hear a little bit about where you're from, what your experiences are, and why are you here today?
Okay. Yeah. So, I'm in LA. I'm from LA. My experiences have been a little different because I'm mixed. So I'm Black and Latino. Um, I grew up seeing my father, who is 100% Black, be harassed by the police. Have a mother call the police on him. And she was an immigrant, but she had an understanding of how the racism worked because she watched a lot of TV when she got here and saw how they portrayed Black men. So she looked at my father that way and actually kind of looked at me like that without knowing.
Wow.
And then I grew up with my family that was mostly Latino. So But I did experience the prejudice, you know, some jokes that kind of were made towards me because I was different. And they didn't understand that until now. With all this stuff happening, they've apologized. I see my father get arrested in front of me as a child and go to jail for something he didn't do for 3 years. Found out, recently I asked my father about that case, and they tried to uh, accuse him of having cocaine first before they, charged him for sexual molestation of a minor, and they couldn't find proof on that either. But they still found some reason to put him in jail anyways for 3 years, almost 3 years. And I've been harassed by the police when I got older, pulled over 4 times, twice by the same cop over nothing pretty much. Um, you know, it and it's because of the way I look, you know. Um, and even at work recently, I started wearing a bandana to see what would happen, and they started mentioning like, "Oh, you look like a thug, you look like a crip." But then I have a white coworker who wears a bandana, and they say nothing to him. Um, and then I've been at the protest because I'm sick of it, because George Floyd could have been my father. And that's what got me upset the most, was that I've seen my dad be on the floor by the cops arresting him, and I've seen him get taken away for something he didn't do, and there was no cameras. And this has happened time and time again, and I got numb to it. I got used to it. I just got used to Black people getting killed and getting arrested, and then our voices are heard. We've protested. We've done violence. You could look down in history to the 60s, the 50s. Before that, it's happened over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing that there's 2 Americas, because at the protest that I was at yesterday in Venice and the protest that I was at in Santa Monica, they're peaceful, but there's agitators. There's people who do show up and start trying to instigate. At Santa Monica, there's people who were trying to run over kids. They didn't show that on the news. They were like right behind us while we were trying to protest, and instead of making a left into a street that's empty, they kept, riding up behind us and honking. And we're telling them like, man, you got to make a left. It almost hit a kid. It wasn't even a Black kid. It was like a 20-year-old white kid.
Yeah.
Santa Monica.
Wow.
And then Venice, we go to Venice, and the protest is peaceful, but then there's a media that shows up with a Blue Lives Matter hat, and they're trying to instigate. And then, no offense to the Spanish media, but they're not helping either, so we're trying to get them out of there. The cops are there. And then while they're there, there's looters ready to start something, and they start trying to agitate. They start throwing smoke bombs, and we get rid of the smoke bombs, but they don't show that on the news.
Right.
And then I left because the cops started mobilizing, and it's crazy because the media will stoke fear, and I feel like it's to scare white people into look at all these Black people looting the community, when instead of making the cops do their jobs, they should be protecting their property and protecting the businesses. Because if the looters see that, they won't loot, and the protesters are going to let them disrupt the protests like we did on Venice. We stopped them, and they ran away. It's crazy. And there's even like people with their own agendas at the protest. Like, we're protesting for George Floyd. We want justice for George Floyd first. But there's a guy going there talking about reparations, and he's not wrong about reparations. But we're trying to tell him, and he's an older Black man. He's older than us, and we know he's right. We're like, yo, you're not wrong that we need reparations, but right now you're taking away from the point that we need justice for George Floyd first, and then we can start talking about reparations, talking about the injustices that happen to Black people here. And the last thing I'll say with my experience being mixed here in America is that even in the Latino community, and it's not all of them, they don't even support this. I've been seeing on media, like I'm going crazy on media, posting up information. And I'll say it right now, like, if you're watching, go to openstates.org, and you can put in your address, and you can find your senator and your assembly member, and you could call them and leave a message and tell them to demand like what you want, that you want them to stop the National Guard, stop the police from doing that. I left a message saying to use the police and the military to protect the businesses. I don't know why they're using it to oppress the protesters. And last month, I know all you guys saw it, that in Michigan, you have a bunch of white Americans storm the Capitol with automatic rifles, and they don't even get a slap on the wrist. But there's people who are unarmed, and that's what we're protesting. Like, we're unarmed. Why are you bugging us? So it's clear as day. It's blatant. It's blatant racism right now in America.
Right.
And I was telling somebody that if you come to America and you're not black, but you're not white, but as long as you agree without ever having to say it that you'll continue to oppress black people, as long as you sell yourself out for the American dream, they're okay with it. And that's the thing. You're seeing silence from people who, I've seen people, put Kobe on a pedestal, but not talk about this. It's like they want to put black heroes on a pedestal, but then forget about the black people that they're from and not want to talk about the same cause. So, I mean, that's all I'm gonna say. I can keep going, but it's frustrating. It's really frustrating, and it sucks.
Yeah.
And it's sad to see how the news isn't trying to. The news is trying. I've been seeing the news try to cover it. In the eyes especially, they showed it that the cops came and kind of passed by a liquor store that was about to get looted, and they arrested the people trying to defend the liquor store that were black. And they were telling them, like, dude, we have it on camera that the looters are right across. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So
it's crazy. And Rasan, you're the only man in this conversation. I think that is so interesting because we do get a sense that most of these situations have, really evolved around the death of black men. And so you're mixed race, you're half Hispanic and half black. But you're saying that even within your own family, your own mother identified you with your blackness. And I mean, the truth of the matter is, you have 1 ounce of black blood in you. You are, you're black, you're African descent. So here in the Cayman Islands, we have people who could pass for white. They have, straighter hair. They may have finer, straighter features, whatever they want to call it. But they still have, whether it's the one parent, the grandparent, or whatever, they still have that African lineage, but yet they will define themselves as a white person because I guess that just makes life easier for them. And I don't necessarily fault them, knowing the world that we live in, for taking such an approach. But when you look the part, you can't act anything else, right? You are a black man. So in your case, you're half Hispanic, but people are still going to look at you and see you as a black man and label you as a black man. And you've talked about, some of the experiences that you have had as a result of that. It's so interesting about the protest because in my mind, and again, I'm just sort of thinking back to when I lived in Florida. I remember the Rodney King situation, back in, I think that was early 90s, right?
yeah.
And I don't remember any protests ever, and there's been a lot, and there've been a lot of African American men that have died at the hands of police officers. But I can't remember any protests being like this widespread. Like almost every major city in the U.S. I mean, Tampa, we never protest anything in Tampa. Like Tampa is like, I often say that Florida is the South, but people forget that Florida is the South because we do have a big like Latino community, especially down in Miami area. So a lot of people just kind of forget that Florida is as south as you can get, right? But Florida, Tampa's protesting, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, like all of the major cities, even in the UK, there have been protests. What do you think, in your mind, is different about this situation? Is it just time? Like it's kind of like the hashtag Me Too movement. It's just a combination of just different things, and people have just had enough.
I think so. I definitely do. I think that people had enough. I think everybody who isn't black has had enough that is saying something about it because we're in a pandemic, and you're seeing the hypocrisy that you're telling us to stay inside, and then you let these people protest with automatic weapons to reopen the economy so they can get haircuts, and then you reopen the economy with guidelines that you can go outside again. Everything's opening, and now they want to spin the story and start talking about coronavirus again, where it's like, I'm out here, I haven't got sick. So everyone's tired of it, man. It's the Me Too movement. It's like a combined thing of everything that everyone's fed up with. They're fed up with Donald Trump. They're fed up with how he could get away with saying all these things, justifying the actions of white Americans who turn violent. But when black people go out trying to ask for justice, it's been 8 days since this happened.
Yeah.
8 days. If that was a white dude who got killed, within less than 24 hours, it would have been done. So everyone's tired of seeing it, and I think it's just like a combination of the Amy Cooper. You got to see you saw that she understood what she can do to you. It showed, and she's a liberal. It's New York. It's a blue state. You can't talk about the South anymore. It's both sides. So everyone's seeing it. Everyone's at home able to watch this stuff, and it's just no one's ever seen this because everyone's tired of it. The whole world is protesting, in London and everything. So I think it's that for sure. I think it's just right now everyone's sick and tired of being sick and tired of everything that's been happening for the past 4 years. So that's what my thoughts are.
And
Oh, and also just the deaths of black men. Like the black community is sick and tired of it because they've had double impact on the coronavirus because they're the ones working and the ones that aren't working. They're the ones exposed either way. And then on top of that, with this happening, we have the police harassing us on top of it. Like, nah, man, we're tired.
Yeah. We do just have a couple commenters. So Mamsie says that they're protests in Canada as well. It's not just the US, it's the entire world.
Yeah.
Eden says hi from West Bay, one love. Nikisha, good morning. I see Jason and Anne in the conversation as well. So let's go ahead and just meet everybody else who's here. So Indiria, you're also in Los Angeles, and then we're going to talk to Shanice, who's in New York. So Indiria, tell us a little bit about what your experiences have been with race relations in the U.S. Where are you from? What's kind of your ethnicity and your background?
Hi, everyone. My name is Indiria. I am from Florida, but I moved to LA and I've been back and forth pretty much my entire life. I am of Caribbean descent, and I am, like Rasan, I am mixed with Black and African ancestry. Um, it's been rough in America for anyone who basically is not white. We all see injustices, we experience injustices, we get pulled over. Right now, everything that's going on, we're just tired of it. We're tired of seeing another one of our brothers and sisters, our sons, mothers, cousins die at the hands of uh, corrupt police, at the hands of the law. We're not taken seriously. Our voices haven't been heard. And we do protest peacefully.
Mm-hmm.
I think the world can see that. And thank you to the world for standing with us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything that you can think of in your own life that you have experienced that was like just so blatant that it was all because of your race? Because of
Um, yes, I got it uh, both ways because I am a lighter toned Black person here in America. And I have been pulled over by the police as well, um, pretty much for nothing. I experience hate, and it's not right. And I do use my privilege, because I also have that for being a lighter skin tone, to defend my fellow com- community when I can. It just happens far too often.
yeah. So you think that maybe as a lighter colored mixed person, you kind of get a little bit of a pass, and you can maybe move into both worlds a little bit easier. So you're more accepted by maybe the Caucasian community.
I wouldn't say more accepted. I would say, I guess, viewed of less of a threat, also because I am a woman versus a man. And you can see that they have been targeting Black men
Mm-hmm.
More so than women. There are women, but they've been targeting Black men more so.
Mm-hmm. Let's just have a quick conversation about when you talk about this targeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
A couple days ago, we saw a situation where this woman in New York, and we're going to bring Shanice here in the conversation shortly, was walking her dog in the park and saw a Black man who I think he just said to her to put her dog on a leash or something, and then
Right.
offered her dog
Yeah.
a treat. I mean, I don't know how,
Yes.
my God, I'm just thinking like that's the nicest thing in the world for a Black man to offer your dog a treat. That is so like non-threatening, non-offensive. And
Mm-hmm.
still she took offense, not to anything that he had done, but apparently just because he was Black, she took offense. And how dare a Black man approach me, my dog? Or how dare a Black man tell me that the laws that are supposed to apply to everyone in this park, which means that you need to have your dog leashed and not crapping all over the place, applies to her equally because she's a white woman. I think that was really what offended her. And
Mm-hmm.
we see people go into this headspace of, I don't even know what to call it, because when you watch the video, it's like the woman just flipped the switch and she was all of a sudden crazy, and she's calling the police. I'm going to call the police on you. And then she blatantly lies on this man. This man is trying to hurt me and my dog. And meanwhile, she's stringing the poor dog up. Like, I felt, honestly, when I saw that video, I felt so badly for the dog. And I'm actually glad that they took the dog away from her because that poor dog was on the verge of being choked. You know what I'm saying? She was like so angered by whatever she in her head had concocted, that she started to kind of take it out on the dog, and she was dragging the dog and making the most movements with that poor dog, and that poor dog was fighting to just basically stay alive. So, her retribution was swift, in that her company said, "Listen, we don't want any part to do with this woman." They fired her. I'm hoping she's going to be seeing some criminal charges filed against her, because in any other situation, you make a false report to the police, there are criminal consequences that come with that. But again, she'll probably get a pass, and in a couple of years, everybody will forget who she is. It's not going to be viral anymore, and she'll get another cushy job at some other financial center in the world and still make $100,000 a year, whatever her salary is.
Yeah.
Now,
Exactly.
I want to talk about this specific situation with George Floyd, right? There's actually a story up yesterday, actually the 31st, which was Sunday, about how a suspected counterfeit $20 bill led to protests across the US. That's the headline. And it's really, really an interesting article because how this all got started, and a lot of people don't even know why this man was arrested. I mean, you think, did he just shoot somebody? Was this a capital offense? This was over a $20 bill. So literally this man at the age of 46, 47 has lost his life because of a $20 bill that employees at a particular store thought, no evidence, may have been fake, may have been a counterfeit bill. So you actually sentence a man to death. Let me just try to, and then I mean, I don't know how these employees at Cut Foods now feel about this situation, but they were the starting point of this whole thing where it's at now, protests all over the world, and a man losing his life, right? A family without a brother, without an uncle, without a son, because they went into a store, him and some people went into a store, and he apparently presented a $20 bill to purchase some cigarettes or something. And employees thought that it might have been fake, and so they contacted the police. And of course, the police show up with all guns blazing. And then, three of them essentially kneel on this man and restrain him even after he was in handcuffs. So that is even more shocking. Somehow in our minds, we want to justify and we want to find a logical reason for why certain people are being killed. So when we think about, African American men, oh yeah, well they're violent, and I've seen the comments even in some of the stories that we've shared on our social media platform, people talking about how, oh well, these guys have, you know, there's more murder in the African American community than anybody else. So there's more like black and black murder, and that's where the issue lies. Like, don't be looking at us as white people as part of the problem here because we have nothing to do with that. So there's all sorts of deflection. I think that's happening in the dialogue. And at some point, you just have to really break it down into very, very simple terms. Had this man not been a black man, probably nobody would have called even about a friggin', possibly counterfeit $20 bill. The
Right.
staff have been in the mindset that there's something wrong here and this man is up to no good. Had he been just a regular run of the mill white teen or white man or whatever, that wouldn't have even crossed their mind. The police probably would have never been called. And even had they been called, we see all the time that, mass murderers who killed tons of people, serial killers, whatever, they get arrested and they get a very different treatment. Oh, you just killed 10 people. You want to go to Burger King to get a
Mm-hmm.
hamburger? No problem. We have sympathy for you because you just killed 10 people. Let us take you to Burger King. We're going to sit down and we're going to take money, that same $20 bill out of our own pockets and treat you to a meal, your last meal before you go to jail. We're going to sit you down in the car after you've been on the run for days and shot God knows how many people. We're going to get you some water. We're not going to restrain you because you're already in handcuffs, so you're good. You're not a threat to anybody. You just killed 3, 4, 5, 20 people, whatever. But you're not a threat to anybody. We're not worried about you. We're going to take care of you. And it's like those images and those videos and those situations, when I see people arguing against that and telling me that, you know, that's not real. I'm making that up in my head. Like that's not really what's going on, or those are just good cops. And so it's not a question of black or white. It's just sometimes you get a good cop. So I want to know, why is it that all the white people are always getting the good cops? I mean, how does that work out for them? That's just statistically how it works. Shanice, thank you so much for joining us from New York. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining in the conversation. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and what your experiences have been with race in America. Are you originally from the U.S.? Have you lived in New York your entire life?
Um, so my family's from Trinidad.
Mhm.
They came to New York, lived here most of my life. Born and raised here. I moved to Florida for a couple years at one point. I lived in Atlanta, and now I'm back in New York.
Mhm.
Um, I've seen a lot in New York, uh, along the lines of just police brutality, just racism overall. And it tends to get swept under the state because of New York, under the rug because New York is supposed to be a liberal state. But we have the NYPD here, which is, we say one of the biggest gangs like in the world. And just, I have three older brothers, all of whom have been brutalized by police at some point in their life. Um, so from a young age, I saw that. My oldest brother, he's about 10 years older than me. So I was probably about 8 or so when it happened. But there's a high school, specialized high school that we all went to, super gifted, smart kids. But right outside of there, a cop had there's a McDonald's by the train station that kids usually hang out at before they, get on the train and go home.
Mhm.
And a cop had stopped my brother, well, came up from behind him and grabbed him up. Undercover cop, which is a big thing in that, a lot of things happen with undercover cops who don't identify themselves. And, they get reactions from people when they're not identified. So he came up behind my brother, grabbed him, and you need to get out of here. And my brother kind of like pushed him off, like this just a random person coming from behind me, grabbing me. And he slammed my brother's head in the wall. I remember like seeing like there was the Applebee's that we all used to hang out at and seeing his blood on the side of that building. And same with my other brother, years later, my parents were actually, my whole family was going down to Trinidad. And my brother was going to the store, like just a, corner store to get some t-shirts, like last minute packing. And an officer had stopped him, and we're all wondering, like, where is he? We have a flight to catch. Like he said he was going to come back. And we ended up finding out that an officer was watching him from the outside when he went in the store, and believed that he was going in there to buy drugs or something. And he came out the store, and the officer started punching him in the mouth because he thought that he had drugs that he was hiding in his mouth or whatever, like, and like really like messed up his jaw. He came home with his face swollen, and they pulled up in the paddy wagon and just dropped him off because there was nothing, there was no evidence, but it's just kind of like a whoopsie, you know. And these things happen all the time here. So it's not even just the deaths, you know, it's not even just the murders, it's straight brutality every day that we go through. Even just myself, just watching every day here, you know, you're driving a nicer car and it's a cop sees you. And they're often undercover as well. And they'll make a sharp U-turn, the sharpest U-turn to follow you, to run your plates. And something has to be wrong, you know, like, and it's just that suspicion and that discomfort that we feel every day. It's being a woman and feeling like, you know, we pay these people to protect us, and I feel safer walking down the street when they're not there, which is a shame. When I see the cars come by, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what could happen now? Like, what are they looking for me? What are they gonna pull? I have a completely clean record, but what can happen today? Which isn't a way that you should feel with the people that you employ to protect you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I even heard a conversation here yesterday from someone saying, like, you know, when they go to Miami or anywhere in the States to just shop and whatever, because a lot of Canadians, that's all we want to do with the States is shopping and like we're on the next plane and out of there kind of mentality, right? But they're like, you know, there's certain things that they would wear here in Cayman, like they might wear a hoodie or whatever. And when they go to the States, they actually have to think twice about it. Like as a black man, although I'm from a different country, and they're like, they always walk with their passport, just in case they get pulled over. They're like, oh, I'm from the Cayman Islands, as though somehow in the minds of, you know, the police, that might make a difference. But I think in our minds, it does somehow make a difference if you're not American, that you're going to get some kind of different treatment. But yeah, they're like, you know, I wouldn't wear a hoodie anymore when I go to the US. There's certain behaviors and certain things that you just don't do. I mean, it just sounds crazy. Like it's almost like you're living in an alternative world or an alternative universe where there's just a different standard for other people. And, you know, it's just that you were born a particular color. So that means that you're going to be subjected to constant discrimination. And listen, we're not even talking yet about discrimination applying for jobs, you know, education, you know, work environment, like none of that. We're just talking straight up with the police. And like you said, Shanice, I think you make a very good point, is that, you know, the police, they're public servants and they are paid to do a job. And your tax dollars, which you pay just like everybody else, helps to, you know, support them and to pay their pensions and pay their salaries and so on. I want to talk about, you know, I don't know, I think most of you probably maybe 20s, probably verging on 30s. So you may not know a whole lot about the different types of presidents that the United States have had, but obviously you remember Barack Obama being the one before
Yep.
we've got now. And I think a lot of Americans sort of thought that that was a win for them. What did you guys think when Barack Obama got elected? Because I feel like the pendulum has swung so far back after he got elected that it was almost like maybe it was better if a black man had never been president, because then that forced the psyche of certain people to think, oh my God, how did we allow this to happen? And now the alt right or whatever the heck they call themselves, you know, they've just swung totally in the opposite direction.
There's sorry, you want to speak to that or something?
No, go first. I'll go after.
Okay. One thing I want to say that I think is kind of getting muffled under a lot of this in the conversation, and this isn't to get too political about Democrats versus Republicans or any of those things, but the Black Lives Matter movement started under Barack Obama. These things did not start with Trump. Certain things have worsened policy wise and just public behavior wise, but this wasn't the start of police killings. And I remember just I can't say that I know a Black family that didn't have that signature picture of Barack Obama right after he won in their homes, and there was so much hope about things that were going to change. And I think it took getting to the end of the 8 years to realize we're kind of in the same spot now. and probably worse, yeah, because now there's that pushback from the public and the alt-right and people that, you know, were so upset by his presence, that are acting out now and trying to um, bring out powers that they don't have. Like you said, we saw those men, those armed militia storming the Capitol. Because people are really angry, but this isn't new. That's the tough part. It isn't new, and it's disappointing. I think a lot of people are disenchanted that we haven't seen the changes that we expected under a Black president. So,
Like I
and
said,
that's not to, you know, to downplay the man or the things that he tried to do, but that's just to speak to the power that this has in this country. It's beyond just one person's.
yeah. And like I said, I think that in reality, it's had the opposite effect. Like it's empowered people who are racist and people who have this agenda to pull to push this separation of the races into a totally different realm. Like they now have a justification in their minds as to why they have to try to revert things to 100 years ago. And I mean, from an outsider looking in, that's exactly what I see has happened. It's very unfortunate. You know, we look at Trump, for example, and his response to, you know, this entire situation. His first order and his first tweet was just shoot people. I mean, that's what he's like, you know, if people don't want to listen, just shoot them. That's his solution, apparently, to getting the job done. And then when that kind of got a bit of a kickback, and people started saying, you know, what the hell is this man talking about? Like he is part of the problem, to be honest. Then there were people, I guess, in his team who felt, oh well, we need to turn this around, and we can do that because he's a reality TV star. Everything is about putting on a performance and putting on a show. So what he did yesterday, and to be honest, I have not watched a whole lot of coverage on this because at some point it actually makes me angry, and I can, you know, because of some of the history that I know, I feel like if I let that anger swell within me, like I'm just gonna go effing ballistic on people here in a minute. You know what I'm saying? Like it's that kind of situation. And so you try to suppress your feelings and you try to just, you know, think of a logical way to respond to things and to have dialogues like this that are educated dialogue, when in the truth, you just want to be dropping some F bombs on people and be like, America, wake the fuck up. Like, enough is enough. You know what I'm saying? So I think if I were in that environment and I was out there protesting, I would be one of those people in the faces of the motherfucking police being like, you know, when is this going to stop? And we know that there are a lot of good cops out there, and it's not even about trying to make every cop out to be a bad cop, but the instances of this happening are just way too high for us to think, oh, this is just a few bad seeds. Like you either have a race problem or you have a problem with the police hiring way too many bad seeds. Pick and choose which issue you want to address, because it's not just that, oh, this is an isolated incident and there's just a few bad seeds out there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just absolutely ridiculous, you know?
Can,
So,
can I make a comment on the cop thing that you said?
yeah, I mean, I was
Can I,
just going to say really quickly about President Trump yesterday pulling this media stunt where he had people tear gassed. And I want people to hear me who are listening to this program. The President of the United States of America instructed the National Guard in Washington to tear gas peaceful protesters. There was no looting, there was none of that. Tear gas peaceful protesters with little to no warning so that he could walk across the street, stand up in front of a church with all white people, one white woman, and hold up a Bible for a photo op to be able to take a photo so that that could be sent out to the conservative alt right or whatever the heck they're calling themselves these days, in order to make a point and to push this agenda of his and
yeah.
appeal to the Bible tooting, I don't know who the heck they are, right? That's what this man did yesterday. And I don't get how anyone who thinks can understand or believe that this man is playing the full deck. Like, how does that even make any sense? Rashawn, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, first about when you were talking about the good cops and a few that sees, I feel like down here in LA, a lot of us honestly hate hearing that now because it's like if you're a good cop, why aren't you stopping the bad cops? Why aren't you turning them in? I've worked for the sheriff, and it's like a gang mentality. It's like you don't snitch on each other, and if you do snitch on each other, they stop calling. They stop calling backup for you. You call for backup, no one no one comes for you. And I wasn't like I was a cadet. I was just a student, you know, working at school, but I saw it. So I understand people's perspective about the good cops, but why aren't the good cops turning into bad cops? Why aren't they joining us? And some of them are, you know, I see it. But that's just like my thought on that too. Not to like combat what you're saying, but it's just like giving perspective down here is we know they're good cops, so why aren't they helping us? Why aren't they doing their job and protecting us instead of, you know, allowing people to put a knee on a black man's neck and let it stand there for 9 minutes instead of intervening, you know? And then with Donald Trump, man, he's a response to Obama. They don't want to admit it. They voted for him because they hated seeing a black man who was also a Democrat, which they hate as well, be the president for 8 years. And they twisted the story up to show like it was some type of liberal agenda. You know, everything he voted for, they voted against. And pretty much Donald Trump comes to the presidency to tear down everything he's done. And they won't say that, but he has. And then he does what he does yesterday, doesn't even address us and what we're going through, our pain, what the world is seeing. You're seeing a leader who doesn't care about black people. He doesn't care about us. He'll mention black people as like a third party, not even like second class. Like we're just like a group of people that you have to be nice to in order to convince us to vote for you. That's how both sides, Democrats and Republicans, look at black people. The black vote is be nice to them, say things that they want to hear, and give them little chips and crumbs of what they want. But we're not going to give them what they deserve, and make them vote for us. But we're not going to do anything. And when you talk about Obama, I feel like my argument with that is like I honestly believe like he couldn't, if he wanted to, when the Black Lives Movement started, if he wanted to, he could have probably said something. But then I'm thinking about the situation at the time. He had so many people who hated him already. Imagine if he stood up for racism. I mean, against racism. All those right-wing crazy neo-Nazis would have lost their minds. And then we have a president right now who is pro neo-Nazi, low-key. And they don't, it's crazy. It's so blatant. And I don't know what else to say. It's blatant. It's like, do you really need anyone to say anything? You just see it. It's just blatant. It's just in your face.
Yeah. Let me just add a little bit more context to the discussion this morning in terms of some of the details about the death of George Floyd, because I think that, you know, this is important. It's important to know the facts. So again, the police were called because some persons in a store were under the assumption, rightfully or wrongfully, that he may have passed a $20 counterfeit bill. Now, the owner of that store, I mean, listen to how jacked up this continues to get. The owner of the store, some guy by the name of Mike Abu Yaya, I don't know what the hell, but obviously he's not a white man, but he owns a store, and he has said after the death that what took place after the calling of the police was not in their hands. He said, this is not in our hands. Everybody's trying to wash their hands of this now. The murder and execution was something done by the police and the abuse of police. The police brutality needs to stop. So he's not even willing to accept how, you know, it's that little ripple in the lake that starts the process. And at some point, I think we all have to be understanding of how sometimes we are that ripple, we are that pebble that starts off a chain of events that really is unstoppable. And so his staff did that. And he also wanted to make the point that Floyd may not have even known that the bill was counterfeit, if it was counterfeit. And I haven't heard anything conclusive. I did see, again, one thing which I'll share here, where someone indicated, I don't know what news source this is, this WCCO, but basically it says, wonder how he feels. He was found to be innocent. The bill was real. Literally all of this over $20 bill that a man assumed was fake. So this particular media, again, I don't know who WCCO is, and this is Mahmoud, whatever his name is, the owner, it says, of Cuts.
The last name, yeah.
And it says that, you know, it turns out that the bill wasn't even fake. So a man lost his life for nothing, basically. And this guy continues to say that most of the time when patrons give us a counterfeit bill, they don't even know that it's fake. So when the police are called, there's no crime being committed, just want to know where it came from. And that's usually what takes place. This was a very circumstantial event. that ended in a tragedy, and unfortunately, were taking a lot of animosity. Well, I would never shop at that store again. Cup Foods, I don't know what kind of food store that is, but apparently he is offered to pay for Floyd's funeral expenses as though that's going to bring the man back from the dead. So again, not taking responsibility, and that had your staff, and now he's apparently indicated that staff will never, in those circumstances, call police again. So they now have a policy change, and they have been instructed to no longer call the cops in similar situations. So Mahmoud,
They,
it's just crazy.
they have a pen that they sell
That you
uh,
compare
that
that.
owners can use where they can mark on the dollar bills to determine if they're fake or real and authentic. So that's not really an excuse just to call.
That's like a $5 pen, by the way, because I've owned one before, and it's like the simplest thing to do in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, but there's just no accountability. So a couple comments coming in from our viewers. Um, Mary says the bad cops with seniority promote in the ranks and turn on whistleblowers. JD says this is bullshit. Quincy says the Bible and Christianity have been used to oppress Black people for years. Wake up, ye mighty race. Um, Cameron says you said it. It's like a game of chessboard in black and white. Eden says Trump even tore down the pandemic task force Obama had set up in response to Ebola. Part of
Mm-hmm.
the issue with America's terrible uh, handing off this pandemic. So he's talking about COVID-19. Um, Hortense says it starts from we as Black people who are prejudiced to our own Black people, and that is
Yeah,
Yes.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We need to go there because
yeah.
when
I've
we, in
experienced it. Yeah.
we bring that conversation and dialogue back to the local community, we need to have that discussion because that happens in the Cayman Islands a lot. I cannot begin to tell you that is part of our race issue. So within the Black community, you've got people who are all different shades and colors of Black and whatever. And so, we as people of color see each other differently. And I remember when I first went to the US, I just turned 9 years old. So I was like in the fourth grade. And I found it really strange that everyone in the cafeteria were like divided. So you had Black people in one corner, the Black kids are hanging out. And this is like in the fourth grade, like seriously, right? You had the white
Yeah.
kids kind of hanging out in one area, the Hispanic kids in one area, and the division along the areas of race was very, very obvious. And then beyond that, you would see other kind of cliques and stuff happening, like, if you were in certain clubs or organizations or whatever, those kids tend to hang out more. And sometimes that fell on racial lines, and other times there was a little bit of a mixture. But yeah, within the Black community, you have people who are like, if you're fair skinned, if you have straight hair, if you have, certain features, you're more attracted to them. We have an entire industry in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, even from the Asian side of things. I'd love to get, Asian Americans and
Mm-hmm.
have this conversation. They bleach themselves into oblivion. I'm like, one of these days you're going to be bleaching yourself so much that someone's going to walk by you and not even see you because you literally become translucent. And this is a big, I mean, we kind of take it as a joke at some level, like in the dance hall community in Jamaica. But all of those guys, you see like the knuckles are like black, and then everything else is like super, I don't want to say white because that's not what it is, but it's like super bleached, right?
Hmm.
And they
Yeah.
think that that looks good. Like no matter how broad the nose is, how kinky the hair, whatever, they think, oh, just by lightening my complexion, just by putting on bleaching cream, sorry, I am somehow going to add value to who I am in a country, in a world, in a community that values clearer skinned people, because the clearer skin you are, the closer you are to being white, which is the
Being
whole.
white. Yeah. I I've experienced it from both sides of my communities. Not being Latino enough because I don't speak Spanish. Because I never got taught how to speak Spanish, but I understand it, And then um, I've been told I wasn't black enough. I've been told I'm not black enough, pretty much, from both sides. I have Latinos tell me I'm blacker than you. How are you black? Because they're darker than me. Um, and then and outside of those communities, I've even had white guys because they listen to trash hip hop music that's not representative of us. Really, it's just like selling out, telling me I'm blacker than you because I listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been told by everybody that you're not black enough. Why are
Mm-hmm.
you mad about this? What have you experienced? But it's like someone in the comments said, like one drop of black blood, you're black. Period.
Exactly.
Look at me. Look at my nose, man. Like look at my face. I have black features. You know I'm black. So
Yeah.
it's all you need. I'm just if I was darker, I would be more threatening. But because I'm light skinned, it's like I'm the desired. Like there's a fetish for black men and black women to have mixed kids to look like me because they like it. But it's not because they want to like support the black cause. If you think about it, like some of them just want to say, "Oh, I have a mixed child." Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that's all I got to say about it. I'll let
Yeah.
everyone else speak.
So we have just a comment here that's interesting. So Shamua, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, says it does not matter how light skinned you are or where your descendants are from, as long as you're not completely white, you are and will be identified as a black person. Your perception of black means nothing to a racist person. They only see
Exactly.
That's 100% true.
they will
Oh, I
not.
hear this.
Yeah, so you will not be privileged. You know what's interesting is I've heard of some stories, right, where people have lived their entire lives believing that they were white, like genuinely believing that they were white. Because what had happened is 1 or 2 generations ago, you had that mixed person who came out fair skin enough. You know, they were the product of, you know, the slave master's rape of their grandmother or whatever. And they came out clear enough where they could pass as white. And their parents never told them, you're actually a black person. And so they had the privilege of living their lives as a white person. There's a very interesting story that I heard years ago on National Public Radio that I just found that was so fascinating because this person genuinely had no clue that they were black. And there was something that came up. I can't remember if it was something like they knew who their mom was, but then they didn't know a whole lot about their history beyond that. So they started to do a little bit of digging. They did like a DNA ancestry DNA kind of test, and they actually found out that they were like 80%, you know, African out of some tribe in Africa, because you know these DNA tests can pinpoint you to exactly where in the African region you even come from. And they were
Yep.
so shocked and flabbergasted. And then here this person is in their 50s and 60s looking back on their life, and they're thinking, I lived an entire life. Like, I'm not a white person, you know, but I got the privileges of being white. I got all of this stuff. And I think what had happened was their mom had like suppressed all of that information because, again, they figured you're going to get a fighting chance in life if you see yourself as black, but more importantly, I mean, as white, but more importantly, if everybody else saw you as a white person. And that's exactly what this happened. Like, legit, this person lived their entire lives thinking that they were a white person. And when they did this DNA test, they were so shocked. And it took a period of like self acceptance, trying to understand how does this happen, you know, discovery, digging into your past. I mean, there's so much that goes into that type of a, you know, just bizarre situation. But, you know, I even think about the things that we do. So, you know, I don't use bleaching cream, I don't color my skin, but I do straighten my hair. And why am I straightening my hair? Why is my, you know, natural hair texture not okay? You know, we do, there are people in the African American community who wear wigs and hair pieces and whatever. I don't hardly ever see anyone wearing a nice afro wig. Like, that's the thing. They all want straight Brazilian, whatever, number 95. I don't know what it's called, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they go after this certain look and this certain, you know, definition of beauty. So when we see like a Miss Jamaica a couple years ago with the Afrocentric look, with the straight Afro, natural Afro hair, coming as first runner up in Miss Universe, that's like shocking. That's like, whoa, are we on the verge of redefining beauty in the world? You know, because for so many years, the people that won beauty pageants come from all the same countries. Like Venezuela always does really well. So a lot of the Spanish countries, again, you know, they've got that certain look, the straight hair and whatever. The Indian girls have a look that a lot of people think is attractive and is desired. So if you're from India, you're always going to be in the top 10 or the top five of these beauty pageants. And I think there's so much that we do to define race beauty, and even just teaching our children how to self-love and how to accept themselves. Like, how many of us ever had a doll that looked like us when we were growing up, or an action figure,
Nah, not much.
right? Because
Probably
they
none at all.
really exist, especially the male dolls. I mean, I've never seen a male action figure. I mean, I guess a couple of years ago we finally had the Black Panther, like finally, a black superhero. But even in terms of just you know, the society that we live in and the social constructs that we don't have black superheroes. And when we do have them, they're like, oh, they have to be a millionaire and you have to acquire this certain, financial status to even be a superhero. Or you have to be part of, some uh, royal lineage. It's not just like the average black man becoming a superhero because, but yet you can have the white guy get bitten by a spider and he's going to be a superhero. You know what I mean? There's so many like narratives, I think, in our head that we have accepted throughout history. Indiria, you were talking about the fact that you are a little bit lighter skin. You obviously have a little bit straighter hair than a lot of Afrocentric persons. How have you, I'm trying to think of how I can really answer this, but have you had any issues even within yourself, accepting, what you look like in the mirror, who you are, and then how do you compare yourself to African Americans that are darker than you, that don't have the straight hair, that have the kinky hair? Like, do you see them differently? Were you raised to see them differently? Because I think a lot of it comes down to, as Rasan was saying, how we were raised. Like, sometimes we don't like what we see in the mirror, and it has nothing to do with us per se, but it's about the fact that we didn't learn self love from the people who should have taught it to us, our mothers and fathers, and that sort of thing.
So for me personally, I was taught to love myself. My parents, my mom taught me I am beautiful no matter what I look like. My brother is darker than me. My mother is darker than me. I am probably one of the lightest people in my family. Um, from the outside world, we're conditioned to have a different standard of beauty, a more Eurocentric definition of beauty. I did go through a phase constantly where I was straightening my hair because um, it was viewed as, I guess, more beautiful when it's straight. And I have had been to hairstylists where, like, in the Asian communities and white communities, where I went with my natural hair, and to them, they're like, I can't do it because it's too nappy, and I don't have the most kinky hair, so I could imagine how people with kinkier hair feel. Um, it's it's really unfortunate, and I do think that the definition is changing, and us Black people as a community, we are waking up that all of our Blacks are beautiful, and there is power
Mhm.
in self love and how we see ourselves and carrying our head high no matter what we look like.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can I comment to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, one of the funniest things I was thinking from the beginning when we were talking about just as a Caribbean community in general, and this kind of spans across West Indians and Latin Caribbeans. A lot of what we don't realize is so many of the things that we take pride in with our islands are African rooted. Our music, our food, all these the things that we feel the most proud of are African rooted. So those are the things that we really need to look to and have pride in it being from there. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because we have different genres that span that they have a similar sound. There's like this tying thread, and that's our Africanness. And but it's my family is Black and Indo mixed, like a lot of people in Trinidad are. So I had some of those issues when I was younger with, the Indian side of my family feeling a little bit more insecure. I had coarser hair, I had a wider nose, I had darker skin. Um, but it's really refreshing now to kind of see how quickly a shift is happening. I have 5 nieces now, and they are just so proud of who they are. They're proud of it. They love their hair. They style it. Their hair hasn't been straightened yet. They have braids and they have beads, and they get to love that. They get to love their natural hair. They get to love their brown skin. They talk about it, so much. And I've always made it a point, and I think it's really important that we make it a point to start this from young. That's really where it starts. And you go to school and you have these outside influences, and it's really important that our kids are firm in who they are from their formative years, so that they can hold their heads high. Whenever I see little Black girls, or little girls, I'll make sure they know how beautiful they are. I compliment their hair however it is, because it's all beautiful, and they shouldn't have inferiority complexes at a young age. So um, it's really, really important that we start that from young, and just keep it going. Anytime I see, a woman in the street, however your hair is, it's beautiful. You look great. It's and our men too. Um, it's so important that we don't let ourselves be torn down.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yes.
Yeah, for
Amen
sure.
to
And I
that.
mean,
Yeah.
I was even recently, I mean, my daughter, she's only 3 years old, but she was saying something about, and she wasn't talking in terms of race because she doesn't have sort of any reference points about that, but something just about the color black. And she was saying, oh, the color black is ugly. It's not nice. And I'm like, where would you get that from? And I don't know if this is something like in school that she may have picked up or somebody said to her in her daycare. But when we were coloring with something, I was like, "Oh, look at this black crayon." She's like, "No, black is ugly," and I'm like, "No, it's not." So even, I mean, this seems very sort of rudimentary, right? But even understanding how when the child says that to you, we haven't gotten yet to black being a descriptive for color or describing a people, but trying to get that mindset out of a child's head that the box of crayons is full of all of the colors of the rainbow and they all have a role to play. So historically, anything that has been black, and that's why I guess we're called black people, has had a root of like evil or darkness attached to it. So the black cat, why is it that the black cat is the one that the witch has as opposed to the white cat? Or the gray, or the purple. I don't know. Cats don't come in purple, right? Whatever. You know what I mean, right? So it's always like the black cat is evil and mystical, and the black forest. Like when you go into the deep forest, it's like the black forest is the one that's like dangerous and all the voodoo, and it's just like everything that has a negativity to it is tied in with blackness and the whole construct of it being black. And so therefore, as people who were before we started using this politically correct term of African American, and I remember when that term was adopted and the whole kickback with that, and I guess we've all accepted it now as okay, but there we were just called black people before that. It was white or black. There was kind of no in between. That even the concept of just something being black carries a negative connotation with it. And I think that those are the conversations that we need to have. So as parents, if you see your children or hear them making comments like that, I think you need to stop them dead in their tracks and say, no, there's nothing wrong with the color black. The color black can be beautiful just like any other color. What are you using it for? When you're coloring something, I mean, it might be you don't necessarily want to paint the sun black, but whatever. So I think that there are conversations, and I'm glad, Shanice, that you shared that about your nieces and that you have some glimmer of hope that maybe things are changing. I mean, there's this understanding that in the next 20, 25 years, the vast majority of America is going to be mixed race anyway. So, how do you reconcile that with people out there who are still talking about? I'm trying to find a video that I actually want to play here this morning. Um, but about people who are still trying to say that, at the end of the day, there is a superior race. And I always chuckle when you hear these people talking about the superiority of their Europeanness or, their pure white culture. And then they go do a DNA test and they find out that they're actually not pure white at all. Like they're mixed and they've got traces of whatever. And, those racist people always have a shock of their lives when they realize that there's no, I mean, there are very few people, even people who claim to be in the Aryan Brotherhood, there are very few of them that when they do a DNA test, that they're actually 100% European or whatever it is that they think that they are.
That's good. They need to be exposed to
Yeah.
their heritage and their culture and their DNA and their history. Um, it's good that they're exposed to this because it's a wake up call. It's a wake up call for the people who view themselves like that. It's a wake up call for racists. Um, it's good that we see who those people are. Back to what you said with Obama being president and now Trump being president. It's just, they were always there. We just see it better now. They feel comfortable to be their true selves, and it's good that we can see it. And it enrages us, it angers us, and we can channel that rage and do better.
Mm-hmm. Yep. For sure. Louis says BLM, black and proud. Um, Cameron says not true. Every color is used for
I
evil.
think
Well,
it's sorry.
Oh, there was a little lag.
sorry. Oh, sorry. I think was there a lag?
Okay, I think we're back. There's a little lag.
Oh, okay. Louis says, I'll just read a few comments then. Very important to understand what acceptance means. We have to accept ourselves as a creation, the viewpoint looking at ourselves as uniquely beautiful. Beauty is skin deep, ugliness is to the bone, heart for a kingdom. Good topic, Sandy. And, again, there's so many things like what I find kind of interesting is the definition of beauty obviously has changed over the years. So, we have Asian people, for example, who apparently, I never knew this, but they also spend a lot of money buying bleaching products. And so, despite us looking at them as African people and think, well, they're fair skinned, they're pretty fair, they want to be even fairer than they are. And they will do extreme things, getting cosmetic surgeries to make their eyes more round, as opposed to the traditional, Asian slanted eyes. So people go to like great extremes to try to look a particular way and fit in with, the world's definition of beauty. And then the pendulum started to swing a little bit because now we have people like the Kardashians wanting big lips, and everybody in Hollywood wanting big lips, which is something that traditionally has been, attributed to the African heritage, fuller eyes, big lips, and that sort of thing. But somehow somebody picked that up in the mainstream community and thought that big lips actually do look good. And that's an attractive feature that we want. So now everybody's plumping up their lips and spending all this money on Botox and lip silicone injections and whatever to try to
Butt
kind of
implants.
capture that look.
Mhm.
So it's kind of crazy, right? Like, don't you sit
The
back?
lips and the butts and the everything that we've been made fun of for so long has now been taken and made marketable and made acceptable. And
Yeah, and they're out there trying to tan 24/7 to have that golden crisp look that so many of us are running from that we do
Yeah.
not want.
Yeah, the waist trainers and then also the twerking is like it's
Yeah, the
what
big
bothers me too is the social media thing. It's like the TikTok, the viral videos of these dances that you see these white kids do, and then they originated from the black kids and they don't get any credit. But it's like you see it like before. It's like don't dance like that. Now they're dancing like that.
yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah, it is. And I mean, it's just kind of weird at the same time. Like everybody wants butt injections now, so having a big booty is like the in thing.
Yeah,
And these are traditional things that have been, sort of affiliated with the African community that, there were times that they were made fun of and they were caricatures and cartoons making fun of African people because of their big lips and their big butts and, whatever else. So I guess they can pick and choose what attributes they want to acquire from Black communities, but it still doesn't make them Black. So they still have the privilege of being able to get that, preferential treatment, because no matter how big your lips are, how big your butt is, if you're not Black, you're not Black.
Pretty much.
So George Fullerton says one past U.S. president has lots of Black children. Most of most of them look white, but are really mixed race. Well, probably a lot of them fall into that category, especially back in the Civil War times. Cameron says Malcolm X finally realized the rhetoric from the nation was actually tearing down the community. When he left them and saw the truth, they killed him. So, this Morning Sue, this concept of African Americans in particular being killed throughout history has been something that people have had to endure for a very long time. So, whether it was like the literal lynching, so they would just hang you from a tree, and that's one of the most disrespectful ways, in my opinion, to kill someone and just leave them there to die. Um, or whether now they're lynching you by putting their knee on your neck and just squeezing the breath out of you. Either way, to me, it's like the exact same thing. Like I don't really see a difference between that versus what was still happening today. It's still, it's still the most gruesome forms of death. It is disrespectful, and just to take someone's life for what reason, just doesn't even make any sense. But I want to just read something here so that we can appreciate exactly what transpired with George Floyd. So the New York Times did a story called 8 minutes and 46 seconds, how George Floyd was killed in police custody. So they've reconstructed the death of George Floyd on May the 25th through security footage, witness videos, and official documents show how a series of actions by officers turned fatal. And again, it's called 8 minutes and 45 seconds. I'm going to see if I can actually pull it up for people to just view it. And then we're going to come back and continue to have the conversation. So give me one quick second here. Sometimes it gets a little bit tricky when I'm trying to do a little bit of a screen share. So give me 1 second. Let's see if I can share this screen. I think these videos serve as a way for us to really put these things in context in terms of what's going on and what has actually transpired. I'm just gonna move everybody else out of
The Monday evening in Minneapolis, police respond to a call about a man who allegedly used a counterfeit $20 bill to buy cigarettes. 17 minutes later, the man they are there to investigate lies motionless on the ground and is pronounced dead shortly after. The man was 46-year-old George Floyd, a bouncer originally from Houston who'd lost his job at a restaurant when the coronavirus pandemic hit. Floyd's death triggered major protests in Minneapolis and sparked rage across the country. 4 officers have been fired and put under investigation. One of them, Derek Chauvin, has been arrested and charged with murder and manslaughter. The Times analyzed bystander videos, security camera footage, and police scanner audio, spoke to witnesses and experts, and reviewed documents released by the authorities to build as comprehensive a picture as possible and better understand how George Floyd died in police custody. The events of May 25th begin here. Floyd is sitting in the driver's seat of this blue SUV. Across the street is a convenience store called Cup Foods. Footage from this restaurant's security camera helps us understand what happens next. Note that the timestamp on the camera is 24 minutes fast. At 7:57 p.m., 2 employees from Cup Foods confront Floyd and his companions about an alleged counterfeit bill he just used in their store to buy cigarettes. They demand the cigarettes back, but walk away empty-handed. 4 minutes later, they call the police. According to the 911 transcript, an employee says that Floyd used fake bills to buy cigarettes and that he is awfully drunk and not in control of himself. Soon, the first police vehicle arrives on the scene. Officers Thomas Lane and J. Alexander Koenig step out of the car and approach the blue SUV. Seconds later, Lane pulls his gun, we don't know exactly why, and orders Floyd to put his hands on the wheel. Lane reholsters the gun, and after about 90 seconds of back and forth, yanks Floyd out of the SUV. A man is filming the confrontation from a car parked behind them. The officers cuff Floyd's hands behind his back, and Koenig walks him to the restaurant wall.
All right, what's your name?
From the 911 transcript and the footage, we now know 3 important facts. First, that the police believed they were responding to a man who was drunk and out of control. But second, even though the police were expecting this situation, we can see that Floyd has not acted violently. And third, that he seems to already be in distress. 6 minutes into the arrest, the 2 officers move Floyd back to their vehicle. As the officers approach their car, we can see Floyd fall to the ground. According to the criminal complaint filed against Chauvin, the officer who's later arrested, Floyd says he is claustrophobic and refuses to enter the police car. During the struggle, Floyd appears to turn his head to address the officers multiple times. According to the complaint, he tells them he can't breathe. 9 minutes into the arrest, the third and final police car arrives on the scene. It's carrying officers Tu Tao and Derek Chauvin. Both have previous records of complaints brought against them. Tao was once sued for throwing a man to the ground and hitting him. Chauvin has been involved in 3 police shootings, one of them fatal. Chauvin becomes involved in the struggle to get Floyd into the car. Security camera footage from Cup Foods shows Koenig struggling with Floyd in the back seat while Tao watches. Chauvin pulls him through the back seat and onto the street. We don't know why. Floyd is now lying on the pavement, face down. That's when 2 witnesses begin filming, almost simultaneously. The footage from the first witness shows us that all 4 officers are now gathered around Floyd. It's the first moment when we can clearly see that Floyd is face down on the ground, with 3 officers applying pressure to his neck, torso, and legs. At 8:20 p.m., we hear Floyd's voice for the first time.
Please.
The video stops when Lane appears to tell the person filming to walk away. The officers radio a code 2, a call for non-emergency medical assistance, reporting an injury to Floyd's mouth. In the background, we can hear Floyd struggling.
Can we get EMS code 2? We're waiting for the mouth.
The call is quickly upgraded to a code 3, a call for emergency medical assistance. By now, another bystander, 17-year-old Darnella Frazier, is filming from a different angle. Her footage shows that despite calls for medical help, Chauvin keeps Floyd pinned down for another 7 minutes. We can't see whether Koenig and Lane are still applying pressure.
What do you want? I can't breathe. Please, the knee in my dick. I can't breathe shit.
Bro, get up, get in the car, man.
I will.
Get up, get in the car.
I can't move.
I've been waiting the whole time, man. Get up, get in the car.
Mama.
Get up and get in the car right.
I can't.
In the 2 videos, Floyd can be heard telling officers that he can't breathe at least 16 times in less than 5 minutes.
I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe.
But Chauvin never takes his knee off of Floyd, even as his eyes close and he appears to go unconscious.
Look at him. Get off of him now. What is wrong with y'all? What the? He got made. He got made.
According to medical and policing experts, these 4 police officers are committing a series of actions that violate policies and in this case turn fatal. They've kept Floyd lying face down, applying pressure for at least 5 minutes. This combined action is likely compressing his chest and making it impossible to breathe. Chauvin is pushing his knee into Floyd's neck, a move banned by most police departments.
Bro, he's not moving.
No, did they fucking kill him, bro?
Minneapolis Police Department policy states an officer can only do this if someone is, quote, actively resisting. And even though the officers call for medical assistance, They take no action to treat Floyd on their own while waiting for the ambulance to arrive.
You think that's okay? Check his pulse. Check his Check his pulse. Check. The man ain't moved yet, bro.
According to the complaint against Chauvin, Lane asks him twice if they should roll Floyd onto his side. Chauvin says no. 20 minutes into the arrest, an ambulance arrives on the scene.
Get off of his neck.
The EMTs check Floyd's pulse.
Are you serious?
Chauvin keeps his knee on Floyd's neck for almost another whole minute, even though Floyd appears completely unresponsive. He only gets off once the EMTs tell him to. Chauvin's kept his knee on Floyd's neck for a total of 8 minutes and 46 seconds, according to the complaint filed against him. Floyd is loaded into the ambulance. The ambulance leaves the scene, possibly because a crowd is forming, but the EMTs call for additional medical help from the fire department.
You added fire to your run?
But when the engine arrives, the officers give them, quote, no clear info on Floyd or his whereabouts, according to a fire department incident report. This delays their ability to help the paramedics. Meanwhile, Floyd is going into cardiac arrest.
320, if you could let MFD know that EMS needs, the fire needs to go to Park 36, your patient is a full rest now.
It takes the engine 5 minutes to reach Floyd and the ambulance. He's pronounced dead at a nearby hospital around 9:25 p.m. Floyd's preliminary autopsy report, cited in the complaint against Chauvin, found that the combined effects of being restrained by the police and underlying heart disease likely contributed to his death. The widely circulated arrest videos don't paint the entire picture of what happened to George Floyd. Additional video and audio from the body cameras of the key officers would reveal more about why the struggle began and how it escalated. The city quickly fired all 4 officers, and Chauvin has been charged with murder and manslaughter. But for many, none of this has been enough, and outrage over George Floyd's death has only spread further and further across the United States.
I gotta tell you, folks, that is 8 minutes and 45 seconds. That is just really hard to even understand. Like, I don't get it. Like, what, like, everything was done wrong by police officers who, again, are sworn to protect people. You know what I'm saying? This man lost his life because someone kept their knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 45 seconds. And it didn't end there. You know, he's foaming at the mouth when the knee is finally removed. And these officers, even after the ambulance picks him up, offer no help to the fire truck that arrives to say, you know, maybe you can do more to help the ambulance that has this man en route. So, you know, I am not advocating violence, but when I sit down and I watch that, I don't even know who George Floyd is. But if I were his family, if I were, you know, an African American living in that environment and living in that country, could you blame me for not wanting to blow everything the fuck up in America? I mean, honestly. And this isn't an isolated incident. This is like time and time and time again. And you live with this every single day of your life. There are people, regardless of how much money you have in the African American community, that tell your children, when you're pulled over by the police, you know, do everything in your power to stay alive. But what more do you do? This man wasn't resisting. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't fighting. He didn't do anything wrong. He explained, I'm claustrophobic. I don't want to get in that car right now. There was no resistance at all. And they still took his life. I mean, at what point, Janet says that this video brings tears to her eyes. How could they be so cruel? Like, I can't even help right now. The emotions that are just coming over me. And it is sadness, but it's also anger. So I know that there are people out there who are taking advantage of the situation, who are looting just because they can grab a free TV and they don't understand the implications here. But at the same time, is it gonna take violence for people to wake up? Is this what it's gonna take? I mean, America is under a pandemic, but the real pandemic seems to be related to race relations and inequality that has been around since America was formed.
Right.
It's it's oh sorry.
I'd like to add, if I could just cut in, Shanice, that we live in a country that this is an institutional problem. The systems that are set up in place in our country were not made for Black people to be equal or even thrive in life. These systems were created and in place. They don't see Black people as human, and so that's what we're seeing today. Even in all the branches of our government, healthcare systems, we're not taken seriously and our lives are not valued. And I've experienced that myself in the healthcare system. Racism is everywhere and it is a large institutional problem in this country. I know we're focusing on police brutality, but it extends to all areas of our community that are supposed to help and protect us. They don't.
Yeah. Shanice?
Absolutely. And just to add to that, I think part of that, I can't even say anger, it's just it's rage at this point, is we're focusing and the media is focusing on George Floyd, pardon me, and it's so blatantly cruel. But we've seen so many more, and like in just the last few weeks, Breonna Taylor, an EMT in Louisville, Kentucky, who's been taking care of COVID patients, who was killed in her sleep by a police who raided her apartment wrongfully, believing that she was someone else. They shot her in her sleep 8 times, and those people have not been arrested yet. Whoopsie, there's no accountability yet. Ahmaud Arbery, like all we've had so many Black lives lost in just the last few weeks, and there's zero accountability, and it is enraging because it's throughout every system. We're seeing it disproportionately Black people that are dying of COVID here. We're seeing just our healthcare system doesn't take us seriously. Our education system doesn't take us seriously. It's all across the board. So it's not just this one particular death. It's a system. It's a whole oppressive system that everyone is fed up with. We're fed up. We're truly fed up and we're enraged. And it's like people want to tell us how upset we're allowed to be when they have no clue what it's like. It's like if you are not here to amplify our voices and amplify our issues, and you're sitting in your privilege, you're better off shutting up. Like if you have nothing to say to what we're going through, if you don't educate yourself to what we go through as a whole, it's better you say nothing. A closed mouth and open ears would really be better. Because right now people are this was just a tipping point. Like everyone was just fed up. So much has happened in the last few weeks and everyone's just fed up. So yeah, it's really easy to want to burn shit.
Yeah. I mean, I,
You said it perfectly.
listen, I understand, like I said, it takes me back to, and it's like the power of video. And that's why I'm so glad that we have the technology available to us where people can capture. And, I've heard people say, well, next time, instead of recording it, help the man. You see people there yelling at the police, telling the police to stop. And the police are, creating this front. They've got their guns, they've
No, they
got their
feel
what more? It's easy for us to sit back and say, oh, you should have done more. You should have stopped the police. Yeah, you would have been just another dead Black person in the street too. You know what I'm saying? Like, what more do you want of people who have been oppressed for so long to do? Like, what do you expect the reaction to be? I mean, like that video that we played at the beginning of the show, Louis Farrakhan saying, listen, at some point, you don't want to hear anybody else telling you about your journey because they haven't experienced it. And not only have they not experienced it, they've been on the other end where they have been able to carry out injustices and riot and, even in the name of sporting events, and nothing happens to them. That whole situation is seen, very, very differently. I want to bring up, I'm just trying to find the image here about the massacres that occurred, ironically, almost 99 years ago to the day, again, for what people have been enduring their entire lives. And so, it's easy for us to speak about, oh, when you're in that situation, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to people, put down the camera. But if we didn't have those images, if we didn't have,
Oh man.
the one camera angle, from even showing that the three officers were actually culpable in this, and every single one of them should be charged.
Yes.
We only think, oh, it's just the one guy. And then he's only been charged with third-degree murder, which is like basically nothing. Like, he'll probably get, if he's convicted, which America has a dismal record of convicting officers in situations like this, he'll probably get 12 months in jail, and that's it. I mean, look at this. On this day, May 31st, 1921, whites rioted, killing 300 innocent blacks, $100 million in property damage, and 6,000 were left homeless. Know the truth of history. And when I
Yeah,
first
that's
saw
the
this,
Tulsa massacre.
yeah, when I first saw this, I'm like, I didn't even know this. I'm like, hold on a second. Is this legit? Like, I had to reach out to someone and
Yeah.
fact check this because I'm like, okay, I don't want to be obviously sharing misinformation, but is this legit? And the person was like, yeah, go read up. It's called the Tulsa Race Massacres of Black Wall Street. And it took place 99 years ago. And I'm thinking, this is just unbelievable. So again, you have people who want to sit back and say,
And to add to that, we talk about the Tulsa massacre. Sorry, there's a lag.
"Mhm, that's okay." So, again, for those people who are not,
Sorry. Yeah, in '85, the
yeah, sorry, Shanice, go ahead.
sorry, '85, the Philadelphia. Sorry, it's a lag. I don't want to speak over you. Just 1985, Philadelphia. There was a bomb dropped on Philadelphia and a Black community. 11 people were killed, including children. So we allude to the 20s, the 60s. We really kind of focus on the 60s a lot, but since then there's been so much more that's happened. So it's this continuum. You know, it's not just these little moments. It's an entire continuum of just the treatment in this country.
Mhm. Yeah, and for those people who don't know anything about the Tulsa race massacre, you need to go and have a look. It's also called the Tulsa Race Riot, or the Greenwood Massacre, or the Black Wall Street Massacre of 1921, and it took place on May the 31st and June the 1st of
That's June 1st.
1921, where
Yeah.
mobs of white residents attacked Black residents and businesses of the Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it has been called the single worst incident of racial violence in American history. And again, I didn't even know anything about this, which is this kind of went under the radar for me. And the attack carried out on the ground and for private aircraft, like seriously, destroyed more than 35 square blocks of the district, at that time the wealthiest Black community in the United States, known as Black Wall Street. So it's not enough to oppress and hold people down, but heaven forbid they should ever acquire anything, you will still find a way to destroy all of that. More than
Yeah.
800 people were admitted to hospitals, and as many as 6,000 Black residents were interned at large facilities, many for several days. The Oklahoma Bureau of Vital Statistics officially recorded 36 deaths, but the American Red Cross declined to provide an estimate, which they say is much more than that. The massacre began over Memorial Day weekend after a 19-year-old Dick Rowland, who's a Black shoe shiner, was accused of assaulting a 17-year-old white woman, of course, by the name of Sarah Page. She was an white 17-year-old white elevator operator of the nearby Drexel building, and he was taken into custody. And again, a white angry mob met outside the courthouse, and basically, I believe they even ended up lynching him. So, yeah, I mean, this is quite an interesting situation, and this again is why shots were fired and 12 people were killed. Um, so 10,000 Black people were left homeless, and property damage estimated to be more than 1.5 million in real estate and 750,000 in personal property. Basically, in 2019 figures, that would be $32 million. Looting of stores and homes and burning of those. The Oklahoma National Guard troops finally managed to get the situation under control, and many survivors left Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the Blacks and white residents who stayed in the city were silent for decades about the terror, violence, and losses of that event. It says that the massacre was largely omitted from local, state, and national history. So I guess that's probably why we haven't heard a lot about it.
Yeah.
Most of Black history and most of the things that have gone on in our community are not taught to us in school. If we are taught something, it's like a brief period of slavery, and it's like the Disney version. So most of us are uneducated, and we have to educate ourselves outside of school with the resources. Now we have the internet, we have access to libraries, we have just outside sources, and since this is the age of technology, we can spread and share that information with each other and empower each other to just know where we come from and what we've been through and where we need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to even add to that,
in my mind, you can't really speak to the struggle if you don't have the facts and if you don't even understand the struggle. And I think that's what that ultimately is what disturbs me when I hear people commenting about it. Like, oh, you guys shouldn't do this and you should respond a certain way. And I sit down, I'm like, what do you know about Black history in America? You know what I'm saying? What have you gone out of your way to learn about? Have you ever sat down to someone in their 60s, 70s, 80s, or even 90s who would have a much better perspective of race relations? And most people haven't, and they live in their little bubble, but they still want to make all this commentary, trying to tell other people how they should feel about a situation when your entire race and your entire history has been determined simply by the color of your skin.
can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what happened with me is that, like Indira said, they don't teach us that much African American history or anybody else's history in high school. College, they have classes, but over here in the state of California, I don't know about other states, but over here in California, when I was in my last year of university, we were having strikes because the state government was trying to get rid of ethnic studies. So that was when access was to learn about our history, and they're trying to get rid of it. So, like Indira said, you have to educate yourself. But also, my dad, and he's 64, so he's seen a lot. So he tells me a lot of the stories of, racial prejudice and injustices, and also just life experience. You like you said, when you live it, you see it. It's kind of hard to even explain to people. Honestly, like at work, I had to go to work today, and I don't want to go to work, but when they ask me why I'm so angry, I can't tell them because they don't understand it. They want to bring up the looting and the rioting, but not bring up George Floyd or all the other Black lives that have been killed. And they don't know about the Tulsa massacre. That's the saddest thing. It's like there's things in American history that have happened, that are happening right now that we're doing that they want to condemn, but then they did it first. So when you know your history, you're able to like combat the ignorance that is being said on the news from Donald Trump. You're like, what are you talking about? You've done this. We learned it from you guys. So that's my thoughts on the matter for right now.
And you make an interesting point about earlier about the media and the media's role in this. And we saw on Friday, I think that was in Minneapolis, when some of the protests started, a CNN reporter and his crew were arrested while his Hispanic counterpart stood very close by and had no consequences for reporting the same story and being in media. So you think, okay, why did this guy get arrested? On what basis? And thank God that the whole thing was recorded. And despite it being recorded, the police force still had their own spin on it. They had their own narrative, like, no, no, we weren't really sure that he was media. We need to verify this, blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, well, why was he even targeted? What was the issue when the guy literally standing a couple feet from him, also working for CNN, some CNN affiliate and whatever, Hispanic dude? Why wasn't he arrested? Why is it the black guy that gets arrested? And they always try to put a spin on it, and the media has an important role to play. So here's an article back about this whole sort of race relations. This is what the headline was. It said, "Nab Negro for attacking girl in an elevator." And it's inflammatory. Listen to how it starts out. A Negro delivery boy who gave his name to the police as Diamond Dick, which I doubt that, but whatever. But has been identified as Dick Rowland, was arrested in South Greenwood Avenue this morning by officers Carmichael and looks like Pack, charged with attempting to assault. Now, we see how the narrative kind of already starts to change, right? But with attempting to assault the 17-year-old white elevator girl in the Drexel building early yesterday, and then it goes on. And these are the things that kind of stoke the fires, even from the perspective of media. We've seen, black men in America lose their lives, literally being hung for offenses that they never committed, including attack on white women. And the first thing that, listen, if you're a white person in America, and whether you're a mother of 4 kids who want to drown all of them in the bathtub, um, or just couple last week and a half ago, the woman in Miami who takes out her special needs child and drowns him in the local lake, the first thing you do is you blame a black man. My child was kidnapped by a black man. My children, I was held at gunpoint by 2 black men, and they decided to take all 4 of my children away from me. God only knows why a black man would want to take on more children than he really needs, but took all 4 of my children, and now they're dead. Go look for the black man. I don't know what he looks like. I just know that he's black. So it's even this narrative of people blaming certain crimes and offenses on African Americans historically that continues just until last week. That no black man had anything to do with kidnapping this woman's son. She's a horrible mother. I don't know what kind of issues she had that she decided to drown her special needs son. But the first response is, if I blame a black man, I have a chance of getting away with this. I have a
Yep.
chance of people potentially believing my lie.
There's this inherent um, innocence to white people and this inherent guiltiness to black people that we see painted in the media every day. Like just yesterday or the day before, there's craziness and looting going on across the country. And just in New York, I'm watching a reporter. There's a white woman walking out of a store that's, clearly broken into, that's been looted, broken glass everywhere. And she's walking with clothes draped on her arm. And they're talking
Yep.
about the other black looters running around. But this white woman who's clearly just stolen from this store, like, maybe she works there. We don't know if she's an employee, or like, are you kidding me? Like, what is this underlying belief that you have that this woman is more innocent than us? And that's what's been happening in a lot of these situations. There's been a lot of like white kids looting and just like looking for like that are opportunists and using the situation to cause chaos, and the cameras are being pointed at us. Why are they doing that? Why are they angry? What we're trying to do isn't being seen anyway, but you're choosing to see just the wrong things. The media has total control of the conversation, and they've centered it around the complete wrong things. So that's
Yeah,
another
no,
infuriating factor.
yeah, no. To even add on to that, in Hollywood over here in LA, my cousin sent me some pictures from because if you, I don't know if you're watching the news of what was happening in LA and Hollywood last night with the protests, but there was looters and looting, and there was a group, and we couldn't see them. We're not sure if they're white or not, but they have. There's no way. Like, if you think about it, they have a truck and they have this installation on the hood of the car with the camera to see them do what they're doing. So they're recording themselves loot.
Mm.
So it's like a group of them. So, oh, it's not. So it's like the media has to show everything. They can't just show a bunch of black people looting and rioting. They have to show these people who have cameras, professional cameras, looting. Like they're doing this for a reason. There's a lot of people who are infiltrating the protests and the riots to twist up and stir fear and to make honestly white America afraid of us and be like, oh, look at them. And Donald Trump is talking about the Second Amendment rights, and he's calling on citizens, not just the military and the cops. So he's pretty much saying it's open season. Like if you see them trying to attack you, blast them. If you see them looting, blast them. That's what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay because the media, even though like some of them are trying to not do it, they're doing it for him, stoking the fear for them to say, yeah, you're right. Black people are dangerous. Shoot them on the streets.
Right. Even the 1921 Tulsa race riot, there's a huge variation in trying to figure out exactly how many people were actually killed. It's amazing that nobody can get the figure right. But the ranges anywhere from 176, I think that might be the official Tulsa Tribune reported that, up to upwards of hundreds. So one report said that between 150 to 200 Negroes died. So they probably don't even know the exact number because their lives didn't matter all that much, especially 100 years ago almost. And potentially on the high end, maybe 50 white persons, depending on which reports you actually believe. But regardless, the disparity, even in the numbers, are shocking. Thank you guys so much we're going to wrap things up here, for joining us today. Indira from Los Angeles, Rashawn from LA as well, Shanice from New York. I really appreciate you guys, coming into our living rooms, our lives here in the Cayman Islands. We live in a global world, and I think sometimes we forget we have certain luxuries and certain cushions that protect us as a very small island. I mean, our population is like maybe 65,000. We have issues here, and we're going to talk about some of those issues later in the week, but it's easy to cover up your issues and to ignore them when you have economic stability and everybody's telling you you live in paradise, you live and you can walk to the beach every single day of your life kind of situation. But my fear is that we don't all see and the inequalities that do exist even on a small island. So I think educating ourselves about what's happening in the US, what your experiences have been, what you continue to experience in your daily lives, is important. So we're going to have part 2 of this discussion tomorrow with additional persons joining us from the US. And I want to invite our audience to tune in tonight as well. Tonight we're going to have a Caymanian young lady who will be joining the show and talking about her own personal experiences with race and discrimination, being again of mixed race. So Rashawn, Indira, Shanice, thank you guys so much for joining the program today. I really appreciate your open and frank dialogue and sharing a little bit about your lives.
All right, thank you for having us.
Thank you for hearing our voices.
Yes, and keep us informed. I mean, I don't know how long this is going to last. I think, unfortunately, it's going to last longer than it should because of the leadership in the US. I mean, already Trump was saying yesterday that he's going to start bringing in the National Guard into these various states. Most governors have said that they do not want him, and that he doesn't even have the right to do that without them requesting it. So we're trying to figure out what the heck Trump is even talking about. But we know that New York has said no thanks to Trump, and quite a few other locations as well, so that they're not looking to stoke the flames of this for the benefit of a celebrity wannabe show. That this is people's lives, and there are people who are trained in de-escalation of very what's the word I'm looking for, of just very touchy situations, and this is beyond that right now. And bringing in the National Guard, even saying that isn't the response of someone who understands how to de-escalate a situation like this. And it's just
Mhm.
unfortunate the man just doesn't even have that level of common sense. And of
Yeah.
course, he's not going to listen to the experts that do.
Yeah.
So stay strong, as all I can tell you guys. You know, um, Rashawn in particular, as an African American man, we wish you the best of luck. And
Thank you.
yeah, I mean, just stay alive first, and
Yeah.
then
At the protests, I try to stay safe because they would love to get me. So
yeah. So who else is involved in protests? Indira, were you doing some protesting as well?
Yeah.
Okay, and then Shanice, have you been doing any protesting in New York?
Yep, looking to go a little bit later today too.
Yeah.
yeah, I might go after work if there's one. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think that we all have a role to play. So some of us may not be, out in the streets protesting, but you can protest on your social media platforms. You can let your
Hmm.
voice be heard. You can, educate people. You can bring these discussions to the forefront. So here on Kimmermall Road, we're just trying to play a small part in the bigger puzzle of what's going on to hopefully affect and bring about change, because we need the
Hmm.
change. It's like here we are, hundreds of years in to America being a country, and it's just not getting any better. I mean, it's just changing. The face of racism, discrimination changes. How they do it changes, but at the end of the day, the real substance of what's happening isn't being changed, and that's what has to happen. So again,
Okay.
thank you guys so much for joining the program today.
No, of course. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay,
All
guys.
right.
Thanks. All right, everyone. So
All right.
Bye.
see
Later.
you guys this evening at 7 o'clock. And again, Jasmine will be joining us this evening. There should be a press briefing today as well for our usual COVID-19 press briefing at around 2 o'clock. So for this week, there's only going to be a press briefing today, which is Tuesday and Friday. So you can mark your calendars on that. We did have some new cases yesterday, so we'll get into some of those things a little bit later on. But once again, thank you all so much for tuning in. We don't have, it's so funny when I watch the numbers, yeah, we had like 100 people tuned in kind of thing. But if I was sitting here talking about something relatively non-consequential in our lives, gossip, whatever, there'd be 600 people tuned into this program. But when we're trying to have these more serious conversations and these more serious discussions that dig really, really deep, or people just are not here for it and they don't want to hear it. And that alone, I think, speaks volumes to who we are. And very interesting times is all I can tell you. So stay tuned, folks. Have a beautiful day, and we'll see you back here at 7 o'clock.